What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hurt Business Podcast. My name is Faris Sharari. My guest, he's making his return from the Caged In podcast, my boy, Chris DiCarlo.
What's
How we
up, my
doing, champ?
man? How we doing? I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
You see that? It was like a little
Yeah,
confetti.
well,
Did you do that?
how I didn't do that. All I did was throw the deuces up, but I got confetti, bro. I don't know.
I like it. I don't know what just happened, but I'll take it.
I gotta figure out how that just happened so I could utilize that to them like the best ability that I
Just
can.
keep
That was
throwing
kind of
up.
crazy.
Just keep throwing it up, dude. I'll pod. But I got to bring my man back so we could talk about Cage Titans card from last night. Cage Titans 63, headlined by Mitch Raposo, who had an unbelievable performance, and we'll start there. But a fun show all in all, and we'll go starting with Mitch, and I work our way down that main card and then into the prelims and on and on. But Chris, overall, what were your thoughts on 63?
The card as a whole, man, started off the year hot. Every single pro fight on the main card ended in a finish, which, I mean, from a viewer's perspective, you can't really complain about seeing too many finishes, especially, the fans being there live and in person. The hall was electric as always. The product killed it. There's not really many negative things I can say overall about the entire card. I think the performances were great. The prelims were great as well. And all in all, man, top-notch card to start off the year, man. I'm excited for the rest of 2024.
Hell yeah, I agree. I thought the card was all finishes are great. The pace was just like bang, 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 which I'm a big fan of. Very exciting fighters on the card. That 170 division just got a whole lot more interesting with
Oh,
this
yeah.
card, and that's a crazy pro division right now in New England. So that kind of blossomed last night, but also we don't really got to talk about this too much. But security was on absolute bullshit yesterday. Just
Yeah,
absolute bullshit for no reason. Just
it
fucking with the
was
boys.
and it was a little crazy. It's never been like that ever in the hall. 2 years inside the hall, we've never had any issues. Wasn't too much of an issue last night. I don't want to like blow it out of proportion. It was just a little bit annoying and a little bit nagging. But we got it handled. We got it figured out, and we ended up
Yeah,
having smooth
that's right.
sailing through the main card, man.
That's right, 100%. And
I will agree with you though. That a little bit there, they were on some bullshit. I will agree with you there.
100%, man, 100%. And like you said, I'm not gonna blow it out of proportion. It was just a little disagreement, but we ended up figuring it out. Shout out Nick, shout out you, and
Yeah.
Steve and the boys.
Yes, sir, man. We got it handled. We Gucci.
All right, but headlining that show last night, Mitch Raposo, the flyweight, man, did he come out with a show? And against Justin Valentine, who's a tough guy and is no slouch. This is not just like a local tune-up fight. This was
Mhm.
a legit challenge for Mitch, but it didn't look like it in the fight, right? Mitch looked really impressive on the feet. The boxing, I don't his last fight against the butter knife Tyler Smite, his boxing
Mhm.
looked good, but that fight only lasted a few seconds, so we didn't get to
Right.
see it. This one went like a full 4 rounds, and he
Mhm.
faced adversity going into that fourth. We were right behind Justin's corner, and they were screaming at him that Mitch's hand was hurt. So to
Right.
try to take advantage of that, and Mitch, it felt like he heard that as well, and like he turned it up. He was throwing that hand and with no remorse or no regret.
Yep.
And damn, man, yeah, to me the boxing stood out most. But what did you think of his performance?
Yeah, dude. I think that might have been arguably one of the cleanest performances I might have ever seen inside the hall. I feel like just from bell to bell, Mitch kind of had everything in his back pocket. He kind of was sitting there and really dictating the pace of the fight. Like you mentioned, the boxing was unbelievable. My favorite part, I think I turned over to you and said this a few times. I loved when Mitch would engage in a takedown, get Valentine on his back, land a couple shots, and then get right back up. I mean, I thought that was super clean. It just showed that he can kind of take this fight wherever he wanted it to go. That left hook that ended it to the body was amazing. Like super clean. We could see he was kind of working that in a few times throughout the fight, and with that liver shot being the one to kind of double Valentine over to lead to the finish. You can see that whatever he's been working on over there at New England Cartel and in all of his camps, that he's put it all together tonight. It seemed like every tool in his toolbox that he's been sharpening kind of came into fruition at Cage Titan 63. And like I said, man, probably one of the cleanest performances I've ever seen inside the Plymouth Memorial Hall. And you did mention that hurt right hand for Mitch. And the one thing that I did notice is there were a couple of people that were in Justin Valentine's camp. I don't know if they were like family or friends or training partners, but they were standing on the other side of the cage watching the fight from a different perspective. One of them had noticed that Mitch's hand was hurt, maybe broken, or just compromised. They came over and alerted Justin's corner about it, and then they really relayed that to Justin. And I think in the relay, Mitch might have heard that as well. And that was after round 3 going into round 4. And even in round 4, Mitch was still not throwing it as much because obviously there was some kind of pain there, but he was still throwing it heavy because he was working that heavy overhand right for a lot of the fight. That kind of slowed down in the 4th round, but he was still swinging it like nothing hurt. So props to him, man. Valentine, all props to that guy too. What an absolute dog. Tough as nails, man. Even when he was getting hit by Mitch, he was coming back with heavy shots and swinging heavy. So props to both those guys, and hats off to putting on an amazing main event performance last night.
And then he got on the mic after the fight in his post-fight interview, and the only call out that should have been made was made, and that was to Dana White in the UFC and to get the boy on the show. What did you think of that? And is there anything else for Mitch to prove on this regional level?
I don't think there's anything left for Mitch here, to be honest. He's got the CES title, he's got the Cage Titans title. I know there's other regional promotions. Like if you really wanted to, he could go collect flyweight belts from those ones, but I don't think that's necessary at all, to be honest. Like if there's anybody from this region that deserves to get the call next, it's Mitch. And I think last night cemented that for sure, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. That was a great main event. It was crazy that would have been the co-headline, right? The main event with JoJo and Lally ultimately fell out. So this one became the main, and it was this was
Oh
well
yeah, I mean,
deserving of it.
it held up and owned that main event spot tenfold, man. So didn't really lose any. Like obviously everybody would have loved to see that main event between JoJo and Sean. Like everybody was excited for that one, but this one really held up and held up that main event spot for sure.
Yeah, and another telling of Mitch's stock was the hall was still packed all the way through and through his fight. Like no, there wasn't a point in the show where like people were like, all right, deuces. Usually that happens at some point. There
Right.
becomes a fight where most of the people were here for, and then the place thins out, and then the main event happens. But this time it was like full, and people were screaming, and even Justin had a fair share of his people in the stands and around the arena, and they were showing him love. So I thought it was a great dynamic of like his crowd versus my crowd, and then like seeing that clash, and then ultimately giving us a great fucking fight. So yeah, man, I'm blown away by Mitch's performance. There's nothing left. Contender series is
100%.
coming up in a few months. I think like you call Mitch right up, man, and
Yeah.
you could throw him in there with honestly anybody
Yeah.
on that next level.
When we were leaving the event last night, it was kind of like, I know there's like 2 options I feel like for Mitch at this point. It's either gets back on Contender Series in the summer or gets the call straight to the UFC. I feel like those are the 2 options that make the most sense. Obviously, I'm sure he would like to, skip the Contender Series tryout, if you will, and go right to the show, which I think he's deserving of that. But if the UFC brass feels like Contender Series is his way to get back in there again, then I'm sure that he's going to have no problem taking that opportunity as well. I feel like those are probably his best 2 options at this point. So I'm assuming one of those is what we're going to end up seeing probably around by summertime.
Fair, man. 9-1. I mean,
I mean, yeah,
that gets you a spot, man. Especially the way he's been doing it. How again, we can keep going on and on. How good he looked last night in there. Yeah, Mitch is well deserving of that next call up. But that was one of 2 title fights on this show. In the co-main, we had the OGs throw down. I know you share a hometown with the winner from last night, Mr. Greg Jones. So what did you think of his performance and bringing that belt home?
The one thing that I know about Greg, and every time that I see him fight, I know his jiu-jitsu is going to be on point. I know his grappling is going to be on point. He even mentioned it in his post-fight that maybe him and Brian Costco's stand-up might not have been the best, and they acknowledge that for sure. But the fact that they were both able to go out there and grind it out, it was more of a grappling heavy fight. Both these guys went out there and did their thing. I really don't have anything bad to say about them, given they were fighting for the OG championship. The belt itself is beautiful. I love that new OG championship belt. It's amazing, man. I don't know what whoever created that belt, props to them because that thing is beautiful for sure. But yeah, shout out to Greg Jones, man. He's a guy that I haven't seen Brian fight before, but we've seen Greg Jones inside the Memorial Hall and through his AME career, and then his short pro career that he's had now. And yeah, the one thing that's always stood out to me is that grappling and that jiu-jitsu. Shout out to the guys over at Daniel Gracie and Mike Gresh. Yeah, so I wasn't surprised to see him get the submission finish. I figured that if he was going to win, I was assuming that it was going to be by submission. And, again, I think I've said this before on a past podcast with us that BetMGM doesn't let you pick props. And every time that Greg Jones fights, I just want to bet on him by submission. And this is 2 now that I couldn't. So, BetMGM owes me a little bit of coin because, I was trying to cash out. How'd you feel about that? How'd you feel about that OG matchup, though?
Oh man! First of all, BetMGM. Let's get some props up there. That's the funnest route for MMA betting, at least from my point of view. Like round and like by KO, by submission, by decision. Like that's a parlay now. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
I like what you said about the design of the belt was so beautiful. It was so nice, man. It had the OG in red, and it looked like it kind of looked like the ECW championship from back in the day. I don't know if you were a WWE wrestling guy, but the ECW belt was so that was my favorite growing up, and that kind of resembles that a little bit. So it was exciting to see that. But yeah, man, I think at one point of the fight, you called it. You were like, it's only a matter of time until Greg finds a submission and Brian taps out, and that's what happened, man. So a great fight. Great fight by Greg. I wonder, he mentioned he wanted to defend it. It's just a matter of who qualifies for this OG. Like, is it above a certain age? Like, do you need to have it? Like, there's one guy who was in the police uniform. I forgot his name. He fought on a card.
Yeah, Ryan Johnson. He was standing next to us for the main event.
That would be fun if he jumped in there for the OG belt. I would love to see that one.
I'm also curious about like weight classes too. Like, does this belt only qualify for the lightweight division, or are we going to see this belt for a heavier division or a lighter division? Is Greg only going to defend at lightweight? Are we only accepting OG lightweights for the OG title? I don't know. I think the construction of it was really cool, and I think it served its purpose completely. And like you said, the belt is beautiful. But yeah, I'm curious to see what's the next step for this. Was this a one-off? Greg did mention that he wanted to defend the belt. So yeah, I think there's more questions now, but I think it gives us more for like added content for future Cage Titans events. And I'm pretty sure that's what the design behind this whole OG belt was for. So I think it served its purpose. And I think if Greg decides to keep defending this belt, then I think that it will keep, serving that purpose for what it was intended for.
Let's keep the OG belt. I'm digging it. And I think Cage Titans loves it too.
Of course. Like I just said, it's added content, man. They can promote the hell out of that.
Moving on, we had somebody travel to fight on Cage Titans. Mr. Tom Santos took a hometown guy in Zach DiSapatino. DSap got it done in the first round, TKO. What did you think of DSap's outing?
I was very happy to see Zach get back in the win column. I know the last 2 were decision losses, were tough. The last one being a split decision, the one before that unanimous. So super happy for Zach. He's one of the nicest guys inside the Cage Titans building, man. Every time I talked to him in the building, or I had him on my show once before, and just a super, super nice guy. So I always like seeing him succeed. Shout out to Tom Santos. He seemed like a super tough dude. I know that he's older, a lot of experience. I think he was 12-12 coming into this one. I figured that this was going to be Zach's fight through and through. He kind of proved that. Ends up winning the first round TKO, kind of got a dominant position on the ground, just kept raining punches till the ref jumped in there. I know Santos and his team weren't really happy about the stoppage because obviously like Santos wasn't necessarily hurt, but when you're unanswered strikes and stuff like that, it's hard to argue against the ref's decision to jump in there. So all in all, impressive first round victory for Zach. I know in his post fight, he mentioned that he wants to fight. I think he said like 4 or 5 more times this year, which, we're all for it inside the Plymouth Memorial Hall because everybody loves Zach as well. Super excited to see him come back and get a W here, and honestly looking forward to see if we can see him again in March. Hopefully that's the plan. I know we got out of there pretty much unscathed. So yeah, very excited to see what Zach can do, and that he's back in the win column in that lightweight division. And I think there's a lot of options for him now.
Absolutely, man. Hearing him say that he wanted to fight 5 times this year is pretty exciting. It's
Hmm.
pretty exciting because the Hall every time out gets really up for a DSAB fight.
Hmm.
And he
Yeah, I
was
saw
the
like big DSAB like cardboard cutout heads floating around, and I'm sure that might have been like his girlfriend or wife or whoever might have got that situated. I thought that was really cool. I saw big Zach DSAB heads floating around the hall last night. I
yeah.
haven't seen that before.
Ever, and I was legit just gonna say that. He's the only fighter that anybody
Yeah.
does that for, so that tells you how exciting he is, and I remember being at a show last year, and this lady was just screaming when he was fighting, like, cheering for him like crazy, and then I ended up talking to her later in the evening, and she just said that she trains with him. So she
Yeah.
just based off that, like, they just become just crazy about the fight, and then yeah, man, it's really exciting to see how he pulls in a different crowd and they show up for him. So it's exciting to see him want to fight 5 times this year. Great win last night. And I'm excited to see him hopefully in March.
Yeah, man, that'd be great.
Moving on, another well, not another. This is one of the 170-pound contenders that risen from
Mhm.
last night that I am excited to talk about. Mr. Jonathan Piersma took on my guy Aaron Earthquake Tricell. Uh, rough night in the office for Tricell. He just great timing on that takedown by Jonathan.
Mhm.
It was so flawless. The timing was perfect. He got Earthquake down and got him in a dominant position in the crucifix, and it really just he said it in the post fight interview. Once I got in the position, there was no getting me off there, and he showed
Mhm.
that. And it was incredibly impressive. And then he called for a title fight after. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thing, man. But what did you think of the showing last night in his Cage Titans debut?
I mean, I knew of Jonathan Piersma, coming into this fight. Obviously, we haven't seen him inside the Plymouth Memorial Hall fighting for Cage Titans before, this being his debut. But it's a name that I've known and I've been keeping tabs on him for a while because I know that he is a top prospect kind of in the region. So was very excited that we were going to be able to see him fight versus a dog like Aaron Tricell, which he's kind of taken the Plymouth Memorial Hall by storm the last couple fights. Very exciting fighter. So this was a matchup that I definitely had circled on my fight card. But yeah, you mentioned it, man. That the transition to get that takedown was beautiful, and once he got on top of Tricell, got into that crucifix position. I think they showed a stat. It was like 60 out of 67 strikes were landed for Piersman. I'm pretty sure 60 of those might have been those elbows from
Yeah,
crucifix. So I mean, you could see the ref leaning in there, man, and he was giving Tricell every opportunity to get out of that
yeah,
position. Obviously, it's not easy, but Tricell for a minute there was flailing his legs around, trying to get hit the body disposition to kind of move Piersma with the momentum. Multiple times he was just trying to just strong arm Piersma with one arm, and he lifted him up a good amount a couple times. And I thought he might have been strong enough to lift him up because he got him up off the ground a pretty good amount. So there's a few times there I was like, wait, is he gonna get out of this? But
mm,
Piersman, when he even walked into the cage, I was like, God damn, that's a big 170. Like that boy is huge for 170. So once I saw that he was in crucifix position, I was like, there's really probably no way that Tricell is going to get out of this. But props to him for putting in every effort that he could to try and get out of that position. But like we said, tough to get out of that one, and just unrelenting elbows, those left elbow. I'm sure today John's elbow is pretty sore. I can almost guarantee that. Yeah, just dominant victory. And you said it, man, that 170 division's coming around. It wasn't really a division that we really had our eyes on, outside of like, there was like Joe when he won it from Goody, and then Jack Congdon turned pro. So
mhm.
he's kind of in that mix. And there was a few guys, but not really as many as there is now. And I think this card, having these two guys put on, and we'll get to the other one a little bit later, put on the performances that they did, with Jack waiting in the wings too. And I'm sure there's probably somebody else in the mix that I'm missing, but
Brody,
yeah, Brody, of course, coming
John
up.
Bro.
So, I mean, geez, they could really go either way they want. I mean, I think Piersma said it in his post fight that he's always looking for opportunities to fight elsewhere in other places, and he is not shy about wanting to fight in other promotions and whatnot. So, but he did mention like, hey, if the opportunity arises and you guys want me to fight for the title next, then that's something that he would be interested in. And I think after a performance like that, I think the fans would be very interested in that one as well.
Absolutely, man. 100%. 100% against the guy like Earthquake, who I became very fond of. Like last year, he had an awesome year where he really like took the hearts of a lot of Cage Titans fans. And yeah, man, Jonathan came in as the villain and really stole the show and kind of took some of that stock. And now he can challenge for a Cage Titans championship next.
100%, man. Like I said, I just remembered a couple more. Sean Lally, obviously 170, got to throw his
Yeah,
name in the mix.
for
And
sure.
then I think what's his name, Cam Rosinski, threw his
Mhm.
name in the mix. That's another dog. So yeah, this 170-pound division in this area is going crazy right now.
Absolutely, man. Back to the featherweights for a second because we had Pat Gilbride come through, man. PJG has some of the slickest jits in the game, man, in this region, and he showed it last night. He took on another guy who's tough as nails, man, really been around, fought on the who's who in New England, Mr. Lionel Young, who Lionel, if you're listening to this, I would love to have you on the show, brother. I think I was thinking about it last night. So just he's fought everybody, bro. He really's fought all these dudes and all like everybody. So that'd be an
Yeah.
awesome conversation. If you listen to this, hit me up, man. I would love to run that. But Pat Gilbride, bro, what you think?
Dude, if there was ever a time for me to like think of one person on this card that I just felt really like happy for to get a win, it was Pat, man. I was super excited, and then seeing the emotion in the post fight just reinforced that feeling that I had pre-fight. So I was like, yeah, that's just a good dude that put in the work and deserved a win like that. Unfortunately, where we were kind of sitting, we didn't get to see like the beauty of that armbar that he kind of threw in there. But
Mm,
looking back on the clips that Cage Titans had posted from Nick's angle, where he was up against the cage and had a better angle at it than we did, and from the broadcast as well. Now I can appreciate it more because in the moment where we were standing, it was right in that corner of the cage where it's kind of hard for us to see. But so there's a little bit of confusion. We're like, wait, what just happened? What was the submission? How'd that go down? But seeing it now and seeing it in the replays and everything, just beautiful work by Pat. Because it looked like Lionel in that armbar, Lionel did hurt his arm. He was kind of hanging it after the fight got broken up. So maybe that hopefully there wasn't too bad of an injury there, and hopefully he heals up quick. But yeah, man, super happy for Pat. Definitely a well-deserved victory. Coming off a tough loss. To transition here and get a W to start 2024. And he mentioned it in his post fight, man, this was a fight that he had fought before versus Boogs. And, he talked about conquering his fears because he kind of went through a lot of shit after that one and with injuries and being out for a couple of years. So this was one that he was, a little bit wary of coming into it. But,
mm.
he went in there and as you said, he conquered his fears and got out of there with a W. And I'm sure for him, he's on cloud nine today, starting the year off 1-0. And I think the rest of 24 is going to be a big year for him. If he can keep putting his wins together and staying healthy, man, I got my eye on Pat for sure.
Absolutely, man. And I agree about the sentiment you shared about just feeling happy for him. 100%, man. The emotion, just seeing like last year wasn't his best year in terms of fights getting canceled. And then he did fight at the end of last year. The fight didn't go his way. And then like fighting Bugs once and that fight, how it ended the way it did. Rematches are never easy, man, especially I guess when you lost the first one. So this was big, man. Big for Pat and his confidence. And I hopefully he keeps this rolling and has a big 2024 because he's one of those guys who could just turn it on and there's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah, man, and shout out to Books too. I don't want to leave him out either, man.
For
Like
sure.
you mentioned that you want to get him on the show, and I think that's a great podcast guest for anybody. He's got a lot of experience in the region. I'm sure he's got a lot of stories to tell. He's one of the realest dudes that I've ever come across inside the hall. Like he's going to tell you exactly how it is. He's unfiltered. He doesn't care what you think about it, and that's why I think everybody loves Boogs as much as they do, and that's why he's such a fan favorite inside the region. So shout out to Boogs for coming in there and taking on Pat. And just shout out to those guys for putting on a performance for us, man. It was, one of the other finishes on this big slate of finishes that we had on the main card.
Yeah. Yeah. First rounds. I love them. I love them. But this fight not opened the card, but was a second round finish, which was not like the other fights. The trend was first round. This one lasted two, but an ultimate grudge match here between Aaron Short Fuse Hughes
Mm-hmm.
and Jake Hixenbaugh. And this was the fight to remake ever since their first one ended the way it did. It kind of sucks that they both took a little detour. I know Jake got hurt for a little, so maybe that's what stalled it. But I'm happy they got back in there. And congrats to Jake for a big W. He got it done via submission. What did you think of the showing?
I mean, I think you said it best, man. This was the ultimate grudge match. This is the one that we've been waiting to see since the controversial no contest that went down last year. Unfortunately, like you said, it took a little bit of a detour and a little bit of a wonky way for us to get here, but nonetheless, they made it happen. And no better time, I guess, than to start off 2024. Jake looked really good. Aaron looked really good on the feet. I think Aaron's striking looked really well. I think that's where his best aspect of this fight was. And I think if he was able to keep this fight on the feet, I think it might have gone a different way. But Jake was able to, get a hold of him and get him on his back, and ultimately sunk in that arm triangle choke is what they're calling it in the second round. So props to Jake. I think now that we have a clear finish now. I don't think there needs to be any more controversy about this. I think that's if there was ever a way to put an end to a feud or put an end to the controversy, a finish inside the 15 minutes is the way to do it. And that was on the side of Jake for this one. So, hats off to Jake. Congrats on the win. And, I know that me and you are both, friendly with Aaron Hughes as well. So shout out to Aaron as well for, taking this fight like you always wanted. And unfortunately, he went out on his shield. But that's what they say about taking losses, man. Is now you gotta focus on the comeback. And I'm sure Aaron Hughes, he's a hard worker. The kid's always in the gym. I have no doubt that he's probably back in there today, doing something inside the gym to try and get back to where he wants to be. So shout out to Aaron. Very excited to see the comeback, and shout out to Jake for a big victory, man. Like I said, just put a stamp on it. No more controversy. Jake deserved that win. He got it done, rightfully so. And now he's on to the next. I know in the post fight he called out Jerry Muse. I know Jerry Muse obviously just beat Aaron Hughes. And then Jerry Muse does have a fight coming up on February 9th. I'm pretty sure he's on that. I'm pretty sure he's on that Combat FC card. So maybe if Jerry Muse gets out of there unscathed, maybe we see Hicksonbaugh and Jerry Muse in March. But we'll see. I think that'd be a fun matchup. I think that one kind of makes sense for all parties involved, and I'd definitely sign up to watch that one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That'd be a fun matchup. I like the call out. He wanted to avenge that loss. But yeah, man, I'm a big Fuse guy, so I'm excited to see how he responds to this and how he comes back. Because ultimately, like I know that's all he's thinking about is that return. And for Hicksonbaugh, this builds momentum. This is some confidence heading into your next fight. Hopefully, he keeps building on this and then keeps working. Maybe he gets a Cage Titans lightweight strap shot in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, hey, keep stringing some wins together, man, and you keep getting W's on the regional scene. It's hard to deny anybody of anything as long as you're winning,
Speaking of winning, this first fight on the main card, man. Oh my God, where did this guy come from, huh?
Dude, I mean, god damn. I know. Okay, what's his name? Everett Desailly. I think how you say it. Good lord, man. What an absolute unit this man is. What an absolute unit. Yeah, man. First fight on the main card, bro. Like, what a way to start it off. We had the intermission after the Amis, and then looking at this one, like once I saw that they made this matchup kind of last minute, Everett Desailly versus Lorenzo Fitzgerald. I'm very familiar with both guys just because I've seen them fight inside the hall before. We saw him Everett last November where he was an amateur and he fought versus Kyle Pufall and just absolutely, did some bad things in there, man. Like he came out of there bloody, body covered in blood, not even his own, which is scary. And then looking at the size of this man and just seeing that was a frightening experience in itself. And knowing that was an amateur fight, and now this is going to be his pro debut versus a guy like Lorenzo Fitzgerald, which I saw also fight in the hall where he fought Jadoffer for the title, an amateur title there. So I knew both these guys were just going to be big, just like big dudes. So I knew going into this one that this was going to be violent, and it lived up to the bill for sure. What do you think about this one?
Agreed, bro. Violent was that. That shit was all that it lasted was, man. This Everett Celeste, this guy might be it's hard to tell, right? Like you just run through guys like he has, and guys like Kyle Pufall and Lorenzo who've been in there with tough competition and shown and held their own. And he's just like running through them. And Nick from Cage Titans told us yesterday that he is like a judo world champion competitor. And
I forget the exact credentials, but the dude's very experienced in judo. He had the judo tattoo on his back shoulder. Whether it's like national or international, I don't know, whatever it is, he's very accomplished in judo and has a lot of credibility to his name, and it shows.
It's tatted on his back, so you know it's real.
That is facts.
I think that's a lyric from a song, but it's legit. Like he has it tatted, and all it says is judo. But the point is we haven't seen that in the cage yet. We just seen the striking. That's all we've seen. We haven't seen him hip throw nobody or pull no judo moves out. He
Mhm.
hasn't needed to. Is insane to think about. The future is high for him, I believe, and this is another one of those welterweight contenders who could be competing for a title shot next.
Dude, I couldn't agree with you more. Like realistically, like you could have looked at these two welterweight matchups as like a little bracket, right? And
Mhm.
since like Everett won and Pierce won, you could realistically match those two guys up and have them fight for the title, given the performances they just put on. Like I don't want to skip over anybody. I don't know how the lines work in the regional scene. Like I don't even know if there are lines, but I don't want to skip over anybody. But it's hard to deny like coming off the back of those two performances. That those two guys wouldn't deserve to just go right into it and fight each other next. I think that matchup would be unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Stylistically, you think about that, it's just like,
And yeah,
wow,
size
wow.
wise too, with Pierce just being like a mountain of a man, and then Everett being the shorter, stockier guy. I think that matchup right there is insane to me. I would love to see that one.
Yeah, those are 2 guys who it's very I'm happy that we caught them at this stage of their career because these it's inevitable for these, like, the guys on this level to get that next call up, like, in a matter of time, maybe not this year, but, like, it's inevitable, and the point like, we get to see this from now, so once they get there, we can be like, "Man, we was talking about this years ago. We've been telling you this,"
Yeah, man, that's
and,
the beauty of the regionals, man.
yeah, real talk, man. So I'm excited for the future of 170 here locally,
Mhm.
and yeah, man, it's really up.
Oh, it definitely is up. That is for damn sure.
Speaking of 170, you had Ozzy Martin on your show leading into
Mhm.
this fight. He went on to secure the welterweight strap, getting a second round finish over Cullen Johnson. Ozzy Ozzy gets people together, man, is what I noticed. People show up for Ozzy, and socially, like, the numbers for him are there. In the
Mhm.
hall, people are screaming for him. The fight style is so entertaining to watch. What were your thoughts on Ozzy so far and his performance last night?
I mean, you mentioned that I had Ozzy on my show, and the one thing that he kept hammering was I can't wait for you guys to see the new and improved Ozzy because what we saw in the Brody fight was, even though he ended up taking a loss in that one, his performance in that fight was amazing nonetheless. So the fact that there was going to be a level up to that is what I think got people's attention the most, and it's what he kept harping on every time that I kept talking to him. He was like, "Wait till you see this new and improved me," and he went out there and he showed it. Man, I thought he looked a lot more calculated. He has all the power in the world. His striking is no joke. I know he's been working super, super hard on his jujitsu. We haven't really had to see too much of it, but the way he explained it to me on the show was that that's a level of his game that has definitely gone leaps and bounds. And there will come a time where he's going to need to show that off, and it hasn't happened yet for him. And like I said, I'm sure it will soon. Um, but Ozzy went out there, he did his thing. I think after that fight with Brody, people kind of like once Brody went pro, it was okay. Ozzy's going to be that next guy at welterweight to claim the belt, and that's exactly what happened. So props to Ozzy, man. He definitely showed some levels of improvement that since his last fight. Like I said, that seemed just a lot more calculated in there, man. He was landing shots and not smothering. You could tell that he was putting the pieces together, landing strikes that he knew were hitting Cullen, but he wasn't going to throw himself into the fire and force something that maybe he didn't think was there in the moment. So I felt like he was a lot more calculated in his striking, and that's a really big improvement. And it's really mature for someone of his age to be able to have a handle on the emotions of a fight like he does. And he's a super intense guy, man. Everything that when he talks to you, you can see how intense and focused he is on everything. So you can tell that he's really, really taking this seriously. And I think that's a dangerous thing for a kid of his talent and his age too. So I'm super excited for what's next for him. I know the next fight, if all the pieces fall together here, I know this next one is going to be an absolute banger. I don't think I'm spoiling anything here because I saw it about social media last night, but Jaden Curley, who's 2-0 in the
Mm,
welterweight division, he was calling for that strap in March, or maybe not in March, maybe May. I think because I know Jason's school right now, so maybe after his semester's over. So I think probably May. So, dude, if we can get Ozzy Martin 3-1 AME welterweight champion versus Jay Curley, 2-0 welterweight contender. Get those two guys matched up. I think that's a fight that comes in with just as much hype as the Brody and Ozzy fight did at the end of last year.
That is news to me. I did not see any of that
I was
talk on
lurking on social media last night, man. I was lurking.
this is why you're the best in the game, man. This is why you were the 2023
Okay.
uh
Jesus
but
Christ.
Jay Curley versus Ozzy would be a banger of a fight, man. Would be a bang. It would just be so violent. Jay's the wrestler. Oh man. Oh man. And one thing I noticed about this one for Ozzy,
Mm.
he looked in great shape his last one, but it feels like somehow he was able to look even more shredded, which I'm like, it's crazy how that's how he does
Yeah,
it. But man,
scary.
I'm very excited to see his future the next year, 2, 3, like just to see how his AME career plays out, and then ultimately when he decides to go pro and how that plays out. I think like Ozzy might be one of those guys who put his gym, his city like on the map type thing. Like Ozzy's the kind of guy that can really transcend like a city and really put a team on a national scale where they're widely recognized. It feels like he's one of those kinds of guys. So
Yeah, I
I'm
agree with you.
I'm pumped to see what's next for Ozzy. And if it's Jaded, man,
Yeah, man, if
goddamn,
we
that'd be
just
a banger.
you like just think about that matchup and it like gives me chills, bro. And it's emotionally tough for me to picture those two guys going out there and fight each other because those are two of the guys that I just really like enjoy the most on this
Mhm.
regional scene. Like those are just I don't know you're not supposed to like have whatever feelings, whatever, but unbiasedly that fight is on paper is so good, but I know watching that fight it's going to rip my heart out
Mhm.
because I just love both those kids so much, and they are super talented. They're both like in their early 20s, like college age kids, man. Like doing all the right things to become better. Jay's over there at Roger Williams University working on his wrestling. I know his wrestling is really good. His AME debut, we saw the wrestling, the takedowns and the slams were amazing, and then in his second fight showed the leaps and bounds he's made in his striking. Yeah, he's another one of those guys that's working over there with Pete Luciani in the basement,
Mhm.
freestyle striking. So you get to see that he's kind of helping Jay sharpen up his striking a lot. So it's kind of working from both ends, right? Like Ozzy comes in as the big striker, kind of working on the rest of his game, and Jay comes in as like the big wrestler, working on the rest of his game. So I think when they meet in the middle, uh, dude, I don't know, man. That's gonna be if that's the one that happens, that's the one to make.
Hmm. It leads me to think like, could an AMI fight headline a card?
If there was ever going to be one, that might be the one.
This is the
Might be
one.
the one. Might be
This
the
is the
one.
one. Now, per usual, I showed up to Cage Titans last night a bit tardy. Bit
Oh,
tardy.
you don't say.
So so I missed a few of these earlier matchups. What can you tell me about these earlier fights that really stood out to you?
In the very very first fight of the night, the Muay Thai fight, I thought was really interesting matchup. It was St. Pierre went out there and got the win, 29-28, and then 30-27, I believe, on the cards. I thought Salazar in the first round. I thought Salazar won the first round. He landed a nice clean elbow at the end of the first that kind of cut open St. Pierre at the end of that first round. So I gave him the first round, but the last two I gave to St. Pierre. So well deserved decision. But I liked that Salazar drew some blood in a Muay Thai fight, an Emmy Muay Thai fight with the elbow pads and the big gloves and the shin guards. It's not very often you see guys draw blood in matchups like those. So the highlight to start off the card. And then just working our way up. This kid Colin Silva, I don't know where he came from. He's an absolute unit as well. What weight class was this? 155. Okay, the fact that he's a lightweight scares me because he's huge, but absolute devastating power. If you go on Cage Titan socials, you'll see the highlight reel finish. He put this kid down. He kind of came out of nowhere. Like I said, he was 0-0, first time fighting MMA, and I don't think there's a better way to stamp your amateur career and your MMA career with a finish like he had. And then working our way up the card, Matthew Martinez, we've seen him before, goes by Pikachu. Another grinding unanimous decision victory for him. I think he won 30-27 on all the cards, and I agree with the decision. Very good job. His opponent was super exciting though. Quintanilla, I believe his last name is. A lot of like high flying, spinning kicks and spinning attacks, and very flashy, and definitely kept Martinez honest a lot. So, and then Martinez really handled that striking style very well and was able to grind a decision victory win as well. And then leading up to the fight before the Aussie fight that we just talked about, Saul Besaril, he went out there and he defeated Javier Acosta. And the one thing I heard about Javier Acosta coming into this fight was there was a lot of hype behind him. He sold a hell of a lot of tickets. I think somebody said that he might have sold the most tickets inside the building that night, which for an amateur is unbelievable. And I believe this was his amateur debut as well. So being 0-0 and able to push tickets like that, like he did, it's hats off to him. He's definitely got a big part of the game down. And his skills inside the cage looked really good as well. So I'll be excited to see the comeback from him. But unfortunately, he was finished in the second round by Besaril, who looked super clean. This kid's gritty. He's long. I think he improved to 2-3, so he's had a little bit more experience coming into this one, and I think that's kind of what gave him the edge here. He was able to handle, the pace of Javier Acosta and was able to turn that into a victory for himself. So all in all, man, the undercard really paid dividends as well. We had the Muay Thai belt go to a decision, Colin Silva's finish, Pikachu's decision, and then Besaril's finish. So a lot of finishes on this card tonight. What is that? That makes it what? Two finishes on the entire card, one of them being a Muay Thai belt, which those typically go to decisions anyway. So all in all, man, Cage Titan 63, when you put a bow on it, tons of finishes, very exciting card. Lots of storylines to run with here, I think, in this one. And, man, it was just an amazing night, as it always is, man. And always a pleasure to do it with you, my boy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is. Last night was a fun night. I appreciate that rundown. I missed all those fights. I got to look at that.
That's what I'm
that
here for,
card.
man.
And you're just the best in the game, bro. And I got to check out that Colin Silva knockout because I
Oh
totally
yeah,
missed that. I
go
totally
back
missed
and look
that.
at that one for sure, bro. Like, and when you see him, like just him as a person, you're like, Jesus, it's a big dude, man. That's a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
boy.
yeah,
He's a young
yeah,
kid. So I'm like, God damn.
yeah. There was a few of those types of dudes last night, huh? All these dudes,
Yeah,
like these 170s, like, God damn, bro.
got to
But
get back in the gym, man. They're making me
yeah.
feel bad.
Real talk, man. Real talk. But Chris, this was a pleasure, brother. Thank you for the time tonight. We'll definitely run this back next Cage Titans. Listeners, please check out Chris. I'll tag all the socials. You guys will not be able to miss it. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. And
Yeah.
we'll catch you guys at the next Cage Titans event.
Yeah, man, and everything that Ferris just said about me, I would like to reciprocate and say about him, man. He's one of my favorite people in the game. I think what he's been doing right now has been crazy. If you haven't seen, go check out that Pete Luciani episode because I know that shit's a banger. Make sure you guys go check out Ferris and the Hurt Business podcast on all platforms because the kid puts in the work and he turns out great content and he deserves all the love and the shine. So, Ferris, thank you for always having me on the show, man. And likewise, once we run this next one back at 64, me and you will get back on here again. We'll do it on my platform next time,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we'll get it going, baby.
Hell yeah. Big 2024 for us, my boy.